All right, jumping into some more college football talk here. We got some Josh Pate, and if there's anybody that I would consistently listen to when it comes to college football, it would be Josh Pate. He's honestly one of the most logical people out there when it comes to college football. I used to check into his live streams all the time. Now I just kind of like check out the videos he uploads. But in this one we got the truth about Josh Heupel. What that means, I have no idea, bro. But I do want to say that I have a Discord server up and running right now. The link is in the description. If you want to go ahead and click the link, join up in the server, man. You know, just a better way to hang out with y'all, interact with y'all. I'm gonna be doing the first of what's gonna be, you know, a continuous thing when it comes to gaming live streams. Gonna be doing my first one tomorrow night, Monday night. You know, gonna be doing, you know, some single player games and just hanging out with y'all on these live streams, chatting with y'all, man, about whatever. Also gonna be doing some multiplayer games, play with y'all hopefully, and especially when College Football 26 drops, wanna play with y'all for sure on that one, bro. Just wanna interact with y'all, hang out with y'all more, bro. So, yeah, link is in the description if you wanna join the server. Let's get into this one, man.
Let's continue the Truth Teller series. I would like us to tell the truth about Josh Heupel, the head coach of Tennessee. Josh Heupel. What's the truth? What do you think about him? He has 30.
What do I think about Josh Heupel? I think, I would honestly say he's one of the more underrated coaches in the country. Honestly, you know, he had a really good season with Hendon Hooker there. I think he's doing a pretty solid job when it comes to recruiting. I haven't really kept up with the numbers, you know, what their rankings are, but from what I hear, he's doing a pretty good job. You know, I like his style of offense. I think it's a very modern offense and it's very quarterback friendly, which, you know, is kind of what you need, you know, a system that's easy to learn, you know, easy to, you know, just easy for a quarterback, bro, cuz with the transfer portal, you know, you could have a new quarterback every single freaking year. You know, like if Tennessee loses someone like Nico to the fan base and everyone had his back through all that they did, you know, and the amount that they supported him and he still leaves, yeah, I think it's good to have a system that is quarterback friendly. And you know the results are there, bro. You know he made the playoff last year for the first time in the 12-team playoff. You know, he got matched up with the national champions. I knew, you know, that was not a good matchup for them at all. So, you know, I think if I had to give him a grade, I would give him B plus or an A minus, I guess. Which, you know, he's still early in the tenure. See what he can do this year, bro.
He wins over his last 3 seasons. Okay, so just to give you some Tennessee context, that is the most they've had.
He's going into his 5th season? Damn, bro. I thought it was like... I thought he's been there for 3 years, going into his 4th. I don't know.
The golden era of Tennessee, really, in color TV history, and that's 1996 through 1998, the Philip Fulmer era. Won a national title during that stretch. Well, Heupel's won 30 games over his past 3 years. That's the kind of stuff they were doing back then. People wouldn't put him on par right now with where they had Phil Fulmer in the late 90s, early 2000s. Of course, you got to win a title. You know, 10 or trash, title or bust. You know, when I hear people tell the Heupel story or they give their opinion on him, it's like some of his history's memory hold to me, if that makes any sense. I'll tell you what I mean by that. He, to me, Josh Heupel, to me, is an example of right guy at the right place and time, because he came there from UCF, as did his AD. So Danny White was the AD at UCF, and Tennessee hires him, and then Danny White hires his head coach at UCF, Josh Heupel. But here's what people sometimes forget. They had just gone 6-4 at UCF in 2020. I think their record had fallen off a little bit each year since he took over for Frost, since he got there. There were whispers around Orlando that if they didn't significantly pick up the pace the following year, that Heupel would be in the hot seat conversation. And he gets hired by Tennessee, and it becomes a moot point. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, that's peculiar. But yet the guy who hired him is the guy who knows him better than anyone. So I'm gonna trust Danny White on this one. That was the extent of my reaction when Josh Heupel got hired, and he's gone there. And from 2008 to 2021, prior to Josh Heupel's arrival in Knoxville, from 08 to 2021, they didn't have a single double-digit win season.
Damn.
2 of his first 3 years have been double-digit win seasons. But think about this. In that 13-year stretch where Tennessee was out wandering in the wilderness, it's like there are the Israelites, there's Tennessee, kind of following them. 8 of those 13 seasons, they were 500 or worse. Inexcusable amounts of ineptitude at Tennessee, which just goes to show you how bad the wrong hire can compound matters. And then when you follow the wrong hire with another wrong hire with another wrong hire, just flaming bags of trash in your win and loss records when you pull up the Wikipedia page. And then Josh Heupel came in, and he's rectified it.
Yep.
So they're in a very weird spot right now, to tell you the truth about how I feel about Tennessee.
Yeah, dude. Like, I will say, Josh Heupel's on my good side, because he's beaten Bama 2 years in a row, bro. Make it 3. Come on, Josh.
In a very weird spot. On one hand, I think it could be a transition year for them this year. I'm not as high on Tennessee this year as the odds makers are.
I wonder if he would have that same opinion if Nico Iamaleava was there. You know, I don't know really what to think about Tennessee. Honestly, I don't. Honestly, I would have them in the 9-3 range. That's what I'm guessing. You know, I'm hearing a lot of good things about the defense. You know, it's the offense that is what's gonna worry me. And when I do the predictions, bro, like I'm gonna have such a hard time doing Tennessee's, bro. I'm gonna have such a hard time because, you know, Aguilar could be. I don't know, bro. I don't know how Aguilar is gonna transition. They're just a hard team to understand right now. They really are.
Many people around here are. Since I live in Nashville, I hear a ton of Tennessee talk. I'm not as high on Tennessee as some people are.
They're all the way down there at 2,800 odds to win the SEC title? Bro, they're under an Oklahoma team that went 6-6. Golly, bro, I think that's a little bit too low. I think I'd have them above Florida. Yeah, I think I would have them above Florida. You know, between A&M and Florida is where I'd have them. But damn, bro, they're way down there, man.
That's not a terrible thing. It's just that's going to happen in college football. That's transition. That's going to happen every now and then. The reason I say that's a weird spot is because I'm very high on Tennessee's program. And I'm extremely high on what happened last year. All people remember is they got blown out at Ohio State. That's the way they ended the year. But that's one game. What I remember is, for all the talk about how big an offensive genius Josh Heupel is, and he is that, how'd they win last year? They were good offensively, but there were several extended periods last year of offensive drought.
Yep.
Let me cut in really quick and ask, look, prayer hands, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you think you're subscribed, check and make sure. Over 50% of you aren't. It's free, it doesn't sign you up for anything, and it helps us keep the show free, college football year-round, the way God intended it. All right, back to the clip.
Yes, sir.
Defense is what won them games. They had a top 10 defense last year. To me, one of the surest signs of up.
2024 season stats and FBS ranks. Points per game allowed, only 16, that's 7th. Total yards per game allowed, 6th. Pass yards per game, wow. Okay. Yeah, the defense was better than I thought it was.
Upward mobility of upward trending.
I didn't think it was bad. I didn't know it was like top 10 good.
Is when the side of the ball you don't specialize in starts to elevate. Lincoln Riley is a classic example of the other side of this coin. Lincoln Riley scored 50 every game at Oklahoma.
Yep.
But they needed to because they were giving up
They had
45
Alex
every game.
Grinch as
And now
a
he's gone to
defensive
USC.
coordinator.
And to a certain extent, he had the same problems at the outset. They were terrible defensively. He made the proper hires, and it looks like they're getting better there. But at Tennessee, like Heupel last year, it's defense. It was a defensive-oriented team. And so that on one hand makes me feel good about the trajectory of the program, even if they have a temporary hiccup this year. I still feel that about Tennessee. Now, I could be wrong. They could go 11-1 this year. But I'm just saying, even if they're 8-4 this year, I'd still feel the same way about him. Now, speaking of the way people feel about him, the Nico Iamaleava stuff is still fairly fresh in everyone's mind, but that'll fade. In the public's mind, they got too much else going on in their lives. They're worried about their own
I think Tennessee not paying Nico is going to pay off for them positively. You know, I think letting Nico walk this year, if it does affect the team this year in a way that y'all lose more games than you probably would have with Nico, I think you'll take that because I think the future is going to be better since you didn't. Because if you pay Nico, you're going to be having to pay a lot of other players in that locker room, man. And that's going to affect, that's going to impact recruiting. That's going to impact the transfer portal, getting players in, bro. A lot of players are going to be asking for more money because they wouldn't feel like that's fair. So I do think that Tennessee in the long run, by not paying Nico, going to help them out a lot more than it would if they would have paid him, bro. So I think they did the smart thing.
Team, they're worried about everything else, that they're not going to remember intimate details of how Josh Heupel handled the Nico Iamaleava drama in spring of 2025. Tennessee fans will. So that really endeared him to Tennessee fans, as it should. Because he finally stood up when so many other coaches were bending a knee to players and representatives of players asking for this and that. And Josh Heupel finally just chested up and said, yeah, go on. Go on. You know what? Even if we have to take a step back this year, go on.
Exactly. And
he got a standing round of applause from his fan base. And
yes, sir.
I applaud him too. Even as I looked at it and I said, I'm not a believer this will necessarily help their overall record this upcoming year. It may help their standing as a program overall. And I want you to also think about this. If Tennessee's the kind of team that's just scrappy and they got the hateful 3 stars, which are worth their weight in gold. If they just got enough of those, sprinkled with some 4- and 5-star talent, but if their nucleus just decides to go all in for Josh Heupel and they're the kind that'll take your kneecaps out in a close game, then you may find yourself late in the year and Tennessee's just battered and bloodied, but they're still coming for more and they're still in the fringe of the playoff race. And you may find yourself saying, those kids are playing for him in the way they are, partly because of how he reacted in the spring to a guy that didn't necessarily want to be all in.
Yeah.
I could see that. So that's the truth to me about Josh Heupel right now.
Yeah, man. I think, like he said, he pretty much just said the same thing that I was just talking about. I do think as a program overall, they're in a much better spot than they would have been if they would have paid Nico, man. And Nico honestly is not worth the money that he was asking for. $4.5 million? Hell nah, bro. He was solid, but he wasn't $4.5 million good, bro. Like, nah, he can go do his thing over back home in Cali. I think that's where he's from, Cali. Back at UCLA, bro. But yeah, man. Hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, please drop a like, hit that subscribe button, man. Vols fans, let me know what you think about Josh Heupel in the comments, man. I'll catch y'all in the next one.